Do you still remember the cheerful tune, "Always Look on the Bright Side of Life" from Monty Python's Flying Circus? Behind the laughter were $30 million divorces, devastating addictions, and a terrifying fight against a cancer once called a death sentence. Here is how these comedy legends look in 2026. John Cleese as Minister of Silly Walks. John Cleese was born on October 27, 1939, in Weston-super-Mare, Somerset, England. At 30 years old, he played the announcer and the Minister of Silly Walks, the stiff government official performing absurd walking routines, in Monty Python's Flying Circus. The sketch exploded into a cultural icon and helped push the show into global comedy history. But once the cameras stopped rolling, Cleese's life became far messier than the perfectly timed jokes on screen. Cleese married Connie Booth in 1968, and together they created the legendary sitcom Fawlty Towers, turning their real-life arguments into razor-sharp comedy. Their daughter, Cynthia Cleese, was born in 1971, yet the marriage collapsed before the second season of the show even aired. He later married Barbara Trentham, then psychotherapist Alice Faye Eichelberger, and finally jewelry designer Jennifer Wade, a chain of relationships that cost him millions. The divorce from Eichelberger became infamous when Cleese reportedly paid around $20 million, forcing him to launch a stand-up tour jokingly called the Alimony Tour, simply to cover the settlement. That financial chaos unfolded while Cleese quietly battled deeper struggles. He admitted spending years in therapy and dealing with recurring depression, even while audiences celebrated films like A Fish Called Wanda and Fierce Creatures. In later years, his health added new battles: hip replacement surgery and treatment for squamous cell carcinoma, a dangerous form of skin cancer. In 2026, John Cleese is 86 years old and still performs in live talks and comedy tours, reflecting on the chaos behind a legendary career. After decades of massive divorce settlements and financial strain, his estimated net worth now sits $15 million. Terry Jones as Mandy Cohen. Terry Jones was born on February 1, 1942, in Colwyn Bay, Wales. At 27 years old, he played Mandy Cohen, the exaggerated working-class housewife, in Monty Python's Flying Circus. The character became one of the show's most memorable cross-dressed roles and showcased Jones's fearless commitment to absurd physical comedy. But the man who made audiences laugh would later face a cruel fate that silenced the very voice that built his career. Jones married Alison Telfer in 1970, and together they had two children, Sally and Bill, living for years in London in what they described as an unconventional open marriage. Their relationship lasted more than 4 decades, making the shock even greater when Jones suddenly left the marriage in 2009 for Anna Söderström, a woman 41 years younger than him. The decision stunned friends and even fellow Monty Python members. Jones and Söderström later married in 2012 and welcomed a daughter together, creating a new family. But in 2015, everything changed when Jones was diagnosed with primary progressive aphasia, a rare form of dementia. The disease is especially cruel. It does not erase memory at first. It steals language. For a man whose life revolved around words, scripts, and satire, losing the ability to speak was devastating. By 2016, he could no longer give interviews, and by 2017, he struggled to say more than a few words. Sadly, he died on January 21, 2020, at the age of 77, at his home in Highgate, London, from complications of dementia. His funeral was held as a humanist ceremony, reflecting the beliefs he had expressed throughout his life. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $15 million. Eric Idle as Nudge Nudge Guy. Eric Idle was born on March 29, 1943, in South Shields, County Durham, England. At 26 years old, he played the infamous Nudge Nudge Guy, the sly pub chatterbox obsessed with awkward innuendos, in Monty Python's Flying Circus. The sketch became one of the most quoted moments in the show and quickly turned Idol into one of the group's sharpest writers and musical minds. Idol's childhood carried a painful shadow that shaped much of his personality. His father died in a car crash on Christmas Eve when Idol was only 2 years old, leaving his mother struggling to raise him alone. Unable to cope financially, she placed him in a strict boarding school for children from broken homes. The environment was harsh and disciplined, and Idol later said the experience taught him how to survive by using humor and sarcasm. That sharp wit eventually carried him through Cambridge University and into the creative partnership that helped launch Monty Python. In 1969, he married actress Lynn Ashley, the same year Monty Python premiered on television. The couple had a son together, but the marriage collapsed in 1975 as Idol's career accelerated through films like Monty Python and The Holy Grail. Years later, he found stability with former model Tanya Kosevich, whom he married in 1981. They built a life in Los Angeles and welcomed a daughter while Idol expanded his career into writing and theater, eventually creating the award-winning musical Spamalot, which became a global stage success. Then came a health scare that nearly ended everything. In 2019, Idol was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, one of the deadliest cancers known in medicine. Doctors quickly performed a 5-hour surgery to remove the tumor, and survival was far from certain. Remarkably, the operation succeeded and the cancer was caught early enough that he required no further treatment, a rare outcome that doctors described as extraordinary. In 2026, Eric Idle is 82 years old and continues to live in Los Angeles, occasionally appearing in interviews, Monty Python reunions, and creative projects connected to the group's legacy. Decades of work in television, film, and theater have given him an estimated net worth of about $15 million, while his comedy remains one of the most distinctive voices in British entertainment history. Graham Chapman as King Arthur. Graham Chapman was born on January 8, 1941, in Leicester, England. At 28 years old, he appeared in Monty Python's Flying Circus, and later became unforgettable as King Arthur, the absurdly serious knight leading ridiculous quests in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. His sharp delivery gave the group's most chaotic sketches a strange authority that audiences instantly recognized. But behind that commanding voice stood a man quietly battling demons. Chapman's early life already hinted at the contradictions that would define him. He was highly intelligent and studied medicine at Cambridge University, training to become a doctor while simultaneously writing comedy with fellow students. His brilliance impressed everyone around him, yet he struggled with insecurity and pressure to succeed. During those university years, he also began drinking heavily, developing a dependency that followed him into his early professional life, even as his writing partnership with Cleese helped launch the Monty Python phenomenon. His personal life broke conventions in an era when society was far less accepting. In the late 1960s, Chapman formed a relationship with David Sherlock, and by the early 1970s, he publicly acknowledged being gay. The couple lived together for years and even adopted a runaway teenager named John Tomaszek, whom Chapman legally raised as his son. Despite fame through films like Monty Python and The Holy Grail and later Life of Brian, Chapman fought a private battle with alcoholism that occasionally disrupted performances until he finally quit drinking in 1977. A far more devastating battle arrived in the late 1980s. In 1988, a dentist discovered a malignant tumor on Chapman's tonsil. Surgeons removed it, but the cancer soon spread to his spinal column, forcing further operations and chemotherapy. Even as his health deteriorated, Chapman insisted on participating in filming connected to the 20th anniversary of Monty Python's television debut, determined not to disappear quietly from the group he loved. Sadly, he died on October 4, 1989, at 48 years old, at Maidstone Hospital in Kent after complications from throat and spinal cancer. His partner David Sherlock, his family, and fellow Monty Python members were by his side during his final hours, and the moment left the group deeply shaken. Tragically, he died one day before the 20th anniversary of Monty Python's first broadcast, a coincidence that stunned fans worldwide. At the time of his death, Chapman's estate was estimated at about $6 million. Michael Palin as Spanish Inquisitor. Michael Palin was born on May 5, 1943, in Sheffield, Yorkshire, England. At 26 years old, he played the wildly unpredictable Spanish Inquisitor, the red-robed fanatic bursting into scenes shouting, "Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition," in Monty Python's Flying Circus. The sketch quickly became one of the most quoted moments in television comedy and helped define the chaotic spirit of the show. Palin's early life was surprisingly quiet compared with the wild comedy he later created. Raised in Sheffield, he was known as a thoughtful and curious student who loved writing and performing sketches while studying at Oxford. That curiosity eventually pushed him toward comedy writing, where he began collaborating with young talents who would later form Monty Python. As the group's fame exploded, Palin stood out not only for his humor, but also for his calm personality and remarkable discipline, later proving his storytelling ability through films like Monty Python and The Holy Grail, and travel series such as Around the World in 80 Days. In 1966, he married Helen Gibbons, a woman he had first met as a teenager during a seaside holiday in Suffolk. Their relationship became one of the most stable and admired marriages in British entertainment, lasting 57 years while Palin balanced fame with family life. Helen supported him through the intense years of Monty Python's success and his later television adventures around the world. Together they raised 3 children, Thomas, William, and Rachel, while maintaining a quiet home life in London that stood in sharp contrast to the chaos of his television persona. Health concerns arrived later in life. In 2019, Palin underwent heart surgery to repair a damaged mitral valve, a frightening moment for the actor known for traveling across the world in series like Pole to Pole. Then came the deepest personal loss. In May 2023, Helen died after a long struggle with kidney failure and chronic pain. The loss left Palin heartbroken, and he later admitted that after her death, the house suddenly felt empty and silent. As of 2026, Michael Palin is 82 years old and continues to write books, appear in interviews, and occasionally participate in projects celebrating the legacy of Monty Python. Though he now lives a quieter life in London, his influence on comedy and documentary storytelling remains enormous. With decades of successful television, film, and publishing behind him, his estimated net worth today is believed to be around $20 to $25 million. Terry Gilliam as Cardinal Fang. Terry Gilliam was born on November 22, 1940, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States. At 29 years old, he appeared as Cardinal Fang, the wild-eyed interrogator in the Spanish Inquisition sketch, in Monty Python's Flying Circus. His manic energy and surreal visual style helped shape the bizarre identity of the show. Yet the real story of Gilliam would unfold not in front of the camera, but behind it. Gilliam's childhood revealed a restless imagination that rarely fit within ordinary expectations. Growing up in California, he spent hours drawing strange cartoons and visual gags rather than focusing on traditional academic success. That creative instinct eventually led him into animation and illustration, and his wildly experimental cutout animations became a defining visual signature of Monty Python. Those surreal sequences, combined with later films such as Time Bandits and Brazil, proved that Gilliam possessed one of the most distinctive imaginations in cinema. His personal life was far calmer than his artistic career. In 1973, Gilliam married Maggie Weston, a British makeup artist he met while working in film production. Their relationship remained remarkably stable, and together they raised 3 children, while Gilliam slowly transitioned from Monty Python performer into a full-time director. Even as he directed ambitious films like Brazil and later 12 Monkeys, Maggie remained a constant presence supporting him through the chaos of filmmaking. The greatest strain in Gilliam's life came not from illness, but from relentless creative battles. His obsession with completing the epic film The Man Who Killed Don Quixote stretched across nearly 25 years of failed productions, lost funding, and collapsing sets. During one especially stressful period, he reportedly suffered a minor stroke, forcing him to reconsider how much pressure he had placed on himself. In 2026, Terry Gilliam is 85 years old and continues to write, speak, and occasionally develop film projects while living in the United Kingdom. His estimated net worth today is $40 million, reflecting a lifetime spent fighting and surviving some of the most chaotic battles in filmmaking history. Carol Cleveland as Jeanette. Carol Cleveland was born on January 13, 1942, in London, England. At 27 years old, she played Jeanette, the glamorous yet fearless woman often thrown into the most ridiculous situations in Monty Python's Flying Circus. Her presence added a rare female energy to a show dominated by male comedians, and she quickly became known as the Seventh Python. Though often appearing in outrageous sketches, her performances helped balance the absurd world the group created. Cleveland's early life was far from ordinary. As a child, she moved to the United States after her mother married a man serving in the U.S. Air Force, growing up in San Antonio and later Pasadena, California. Surrounded by a completely different culture, she developed confidence and stage presence early, eventually returning to London in 1960 to pursue acting. Her ability to adapt to both American and British environments gave her a unique comedic rhythm that caught the attention of the Monty Python team when they were casting for female roles. Working on Monty Python's Flying Circus placed Cleveland in a strange and often difficult position. She was the only woman regularly appearing alongside 6 powerful comedic personalities, each with strong creative egos. At first, some viewers dismissed her as little more than decoration, a glamorous face placed beside the chaotic humor. Cleveland pushed back against that image by throwing herself fully into the sketches, performing outrageous scenes and physical comedy with the same commitment seen in films like Monty Python and The Holy Grail, and now for something completely different. In her personal life, she married Peter Brett in 1971, but the marriage ended in divorce in 1983, and the couple had no children. However, she quietly continued acting in small roles and appearances while attending fan conventions and reunion events. The pressures of being remembered mainly for one show followed her for decades, yet she remained grateful that the sketches had given her a lasting place in television history. Now, Carol Cleveland is 84 years old and continues to live a relatively private life, while occasionally appearing at fan gatherings and Monty Python tribute events. Though she never reached the financial heights of her famous co-stars, her work across television and film has earned her an estimated net worth of around $2 million. Neil Innes as Sir Robin's Minstrel. Neil Innes was born on December 9, 1944, in Danbury, Essex, England. At 25 years old, he appeared in the Monty Python Circle and later became famous as Sir Robin's Minstrel, the wandering singer narrating the Cowardly Knight's embarrassing adventures in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. His witty songs gave Monty Python a musical soul and earned him the nickname the Seventh Python. But the cheerful melodies often hid a career filled with quiet struggles. Innes's childhood already hinted at his unusual creative path. Raised in a military family, he spent much of his youth moving from place to place and learning to adapt quickly. Music became his refuge, and during his years at art school, he began writing comic songs that blended satire with catchy melodies. That talent soon attracted the attention of comedians and television producers, eventually leading him to collaborations with Monty Python and the creation of the parody band, The Ruttles, famously featured in the mockumentary All You Need Is Cash. Success, however, came with unexpected conflict. Innes found himself entangled in a long legal battle with the Beatles' management company over whether the Ruttles songs were too similar to Beatles music. The dispute dragged on for years and placed enormous pressure on his career and finances, forcing him to fight to defend his parody as legitimate comedy. Even so, Innes continued writing music and performing with the same playful spirit that made him beloved by Monty Python fans. Despite maintaining an active career, his life ended suddenly. On December 29, 2019, Neil Innes died at his home from a heart attack, a shock to fans and colleagues who had seen him perform and create music for decades. The news spread quickly across the comedy world, and many Monty Python members paid tribute to the man who had quietly shaped the group's musical identity. Neil Innes passed away at the age of 75 on December 29, 2019, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant musical satire that stretched from Monty Python to the Ruttles. His funeral was held privately with family and close friends, remembering his gentle personality and sharp wit. At the time of his death, his estimated net worth was around $3 million, but his true influence lay in the songs that helped define the sound of British comedy. Buzz Aldrin as himself. Buzz Aldrin was born on January 20, 1930, in Montclair, New Jersey, United States. At 40 years old, he appeared as himself, the legendary Apollo 11 astronaut who had walked on the moon, in Monty Python's Flying Circus during a humorous television cameo. His presence brought an absurd twist to the show, placing one of the greatest space heroes of the 20th century inside the bizarre world of Monty Python. Aldrin's early life was shaped by ambition and discipline. His mother's maiden name was Moon, a coincidence that would later feel almost prophetic. He graduated from the U.S. Military Academy at West Point and became a fighter pilot before joining NASA, eventually flying the Gemini 12 mission and then the historic Apollo 11 mission in 1969 with Neil Armstrong and Michael Collins. When Aldrin stepped onto the lunar surface, he became the second human being to walk on the moon, an achievement that turned him into a global icon almost overnight. Yet the return to Earth proved far more difficult than the journey to the moon. Aldrin struggled with severe clinical depression and heavy alcoholism, problems that intensified after the intense fame of Apollo 11 faded. His personal life reflected the turmoil. His first marriage to Joan Ann Archer ended in divorce in 1975 after 3 children, followed by short and troubled marriages to Beverly Van Zyl and later Lois Driggs Cannon. During the darkest period of the 1970s, he reportedly faced serious financial trouble and even worked selling used cars while fighting addiction, a shocking fall for a man once celebrated as a hero of humanity. Aldrin eventually rebuilt his life after entering rehabilitation in 1975, beginning a long recovery that allowed him to speak openly about mental health struggles in his memoir, Magnificent Desolation. Decades later, he faced new personal loss when his fourth wife, Dr. Anka Farr, whom he had married in 2023 at the age of 93, passed away in October 2025. The marriage itself had stunned the world, both for Aldrin's age and for the remarkable resilience he showed after surviving decades of emotional battles. As of 2026, Buzz Aldrin is 96 years old and remains the last surviving member of the Apollo 11 crew, continuing to appear in interviews and space exploration events while advocating for future missions to Mars. His estimated net worth today is $12 million, but his real legacy lies in the moment he stepped onto the moon and changed human history forever. Connie Booth as Ophelia. Connie Booth was born on December 2, 1940, in Indianapolis, Indiana, United States. At 29 years old, she played Ophelia, the naive young woman caught inside Monty Python's surreal chaos, in Monty Python's Flying Circus. Her brief appearances added a rare female presence to the show's wildly absurd sketches. Yet Booth would soon become far more famous for something else entirely. Her early life was marked by determination and independence. After moving to Britain as a young woman, Booth worked small acting roles while building a writing career in television comedy. Her breakthrough came when she collaborated with John Cleese on the legendary sitcom Fawlty Towers, where she played Polly and co-wrote many episodes. The series became one of the most celebrated British comedies ever made, turning Booth from a supporting performer into a respected writer in the industry. Behind the scenes, however, her personal life was unraveling. Booth had married John Cleese in 1968, and together they had a daughter, Cynthia Cleese. But the pressure of fame and constant creative conflict slowly damaged the marriage. The situation reached an uncomfortable peak during the production of Fawlty Towers Season 2, when the couple had already divorced yet still had to appear together on screen as if nothing had happened. Friends later described the atmosphere as painfully awkward, with the two barely speaking between scenes while still delivering some of the sharpest comedy ever filmed. The strain of show business eventually pushed Booth toward a dramatic decision. Exhausted by the pressures of television, she quietly stepped away from acting in 1995 and returned to university to study psychology. After retraining, she spent many years working as a psychotherapist in London, helping patients deal with emotional struggles far removed from the world of television studios and comedy scripts. In 2026, Connie Booth is 85 years old and has fully retired after decades working in mental health. She has been married since 2000 to writer and theater critic John Lahr, with whom she built a far quieter life away from the spotlight. Although her acting career was relatively short, her work on Fawlty Towers and Monty Python remains deeply influential, and her estimated net worth is $2 million. So time has changed many things since Monty Python's Flying Circus, 1969 to 1974, first aired. Some of the stars are still with us, while others have left behind unforgettable legacies that continue to shape comedy today. But one question remains. Which Monty Python cast member surprised you the most when you saw them then and now? Let us know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this look back at Monty Python's Flying Circus, 1969 to 1974, then and now, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more surprising stories about your favorite classic TV stars.